The political party I most identify with is the Democratic Party. Although I do believe in a handful of Republican ideals, I think I agree with or stand with more from those of the Democratic Party, as I value positive social change and think a certain way on a handful of issues that I'll get into later in the presentation. I agree with the values and ideals that go along with judicial activism rather than judicial restraint. Judicial activism, most commonly believed by Democrats, as it follows the loose interpretation of the Constitution. I think it's also important for the Constitution to be applied in a way so that it is caught up with and relates to the way our society has progressed. Judicial restraint, which typically is what Republicans believe in, supports a strict interpretation of the Constitution. This is something I do not at all agree with, as I do not think the old interpretations or purpose of the Constitution should be used in court cases today. Our society has moved on and progressed in ways for a reason, and I believe that the way we interpret and apply the Constitution should change along with that. I think I agree with more of the ideals of classical republicanism, as I value the idea of having a stronger, better government. In order for this to happen, though, citizens must give up some of their individual freedoms. Although I do value our individual freedoms and liberties, I think that having a stronger government is more important, for one of the main reasons being is that it prevents tyranny. I think reforming the Supreme Court is a very necessary step in creating a less biased and less politicized court. In our court's current situation, with just 3 Democratic justices and 6 Republican justices, decisions have been heavily biased and usually in favor of the Republican side. In order to reform the court, 4 justices could be added to allow for better representation of both parties. The mask mandate has been a very controversial subject for both parties. While most Republicans are against it, most Democrats have fought for the mandate of masks in the midst of the pandemic. When the masks were first mandated in April of 2020, some argued that the mandate violates our constitutional rights. Personally, I believe that since the masks were really only mandated for our own safety by lowering the chance of spreading the virus, I think the mask should have been mandated. I think that people who refuse to wear masks in certain stores should be denied entry, because if you don't want to abide by the rules of a business or corporation, then you don't need to go into the business and support them. This goes along with the idea of classical republicanism, as the mandation of masks may have been argued to go against our First Amendment right. I think it's very important for students to have the chance to express their true opinion on certain things without holding anything back. I think that they should be allowed to take whatever political side they want, even if their entire class disagrees. The only case that students should not be allowed to express their true opinion on something is if it harms or blatantly insults a group of people or other students. I think the Equal Rights Amendment would be very necessary and beneficial in not only creating equality in a workspace, but also ensuring for there to be an end to any discrepancies in the legal rights of men and women involving divorce, property, and most importantly, reproductive rights. I strongly believe against the rulings that were recently made in court which took away the constitutional right to abortion. I think that having access to an abortion is just an essential part of health care and should not be questioned by anyone, especially someone who would not be put in the position to ever have an abortion. I'm a very firm believer that you should have full control and authority as to what can or cannot happen with your body, and therefore think that abortion should be a constitutional right. I think affirmative action is a very necessary step in college admissions. One of the main reasons being is that it ensures diversity on a school's campus, which just allows students to learn from people with different experiences than their own. Affirmative action also allows for minority students to have a better chance in succeeding in life than ever before. As much as I believe that businesses should not spy on Americans, I do think that in many cases, when you sign up for a website or download an app and agree with the terms of service, you are giving your consent to whatever service you are using to access your personal information. If you don't want them to access your information, then you should not use that service, and check that box. One executive privilege that the president has that should not exist is the privilege to refuse to produce certain documents in certain circumstances. I think it's very important the president is completely transparent with their documents, records, and information. If they're refusing to produce any of this evidence about themselves, they probably do have something to hide, and I think there should be further investigation to see what's going on. I think fake news is protected by your right of free speech. Although it is dangerous for people to be misled by completely false information, I think whoever it is that is putting out this fake news has the right to say whatever they want. People need to pay more attention as to what information they're reading and make sure that it is coming from a legitimate source. One topic that I'm very passionate about is climate change. I think the rising temperature of the earth is a huge problem that needs to be taken seriously. People that even deny it's happening at all need to do more research and get their information from more than one source. Whether people like it or not, the temperature of the Earth is getting higher and higher. Although one cause of this is the natural temperature changes in phases of Earth, another huge contributing factor is humans. Our carbon emissions have been proven to decrease the size of the ozone layer and ultimately warm up the Earth. I think it's very important that we do anything we can to lower our carbon emissions. The key factor of treating this problem is taking action as soon as possible. As for the 2022 midterm election, I'm glad that the Democratic Party won an extra seat in the Senate and the Republican Party lost a seat. However, I'm not happy with the outcome of the House of Reps election because the Republican Party gained another 9 seats and the Democratic Party lost 9 seats. I think it would be a lot better if Congress were to make laws for the country. I do not at all agree with the idea that 9 old people in Washington are determining how Americans live their lives. I also do think that they shouldn't be serving don't think that they should be serving for life. I think it's very important that justices on the Supreme Court accurately represent all the different views and opinions of Americans. Although gerrymandering may benefit one party some of the time and another party the other times, I do not think it's something that should be used. I think this technique is morally wrong. I think it's very important that voting results in certain areas actually represent who the people are voting for. I think people running in an election should win solely for the reason that they have more votes and because they win fair and square. I do believe in the idea that criminals should have the right to remain silent during arrest. I think it's especially important that everyone has the right to an attorney because this helps ensure that people who wouldn't normally have access to an attorney to have one and rightfully defend themselves.